And then we're going to go share on Facebook Live. This thing, it'll have your hands shaking because you're like, Lord, hurry up.
Lord.
I thought she said she was going to do something tonight. It ain't even on here.
I get my plug in. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, we're about to go live. Let's see the science. Melinda, wait till the 1st. I'm going to do a listening party for The Wiz, the movie, and we're going to get dressed up to the T.
What? We're going to dress like what? The Wiz people, or are we going to dress regular?
Dress like fairy godmothers or superheroes or whatever, like a costume party, and listen to The Wiz and just talk about how, you know, the music is amazing, how the music affects people's lives, because there's a lot of lessons in that movie.
Oh, okay. That'd be interesting.
A lot of lessons.
I can never watch it all the way to the end. It's just too much for me.
Like it gets sad?
No, I just get tired of
all the singing.
Yeah, all the dancing and singing. I'm like, oh shit, I'm over this.
We're not gonna watch the movie. We just gonna do the music, but then you
okay, well, good, because I don't want to see that.
You can't do both. Okay.
No.
I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the button.
Diana Ross is horrible in it anyway.
That's hilarious. She looks very strange. She looks like a very strange woman. Anyway, hopefully you all can see us and hear us, and we're gonna start sharing this now. First, I'll just go ahead and start sharing on Facebook. But this is, let's see. All right, share on. No, don't want to do that. And now I'm sharing it on Victor. I'm sharing it on your timeline.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So now we can get started. Tonight is the science of crystals. I'm so excited because I love crystals. I have crystals, and I really don't know much about crystals. I know about chakras and the colors and things like that, but it's just exciting. We're going to have Mr. Victor Hamsa. You're out there in New York, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the starter screen and say, here is Victor out there in New York. You own a crystal store. You do Reiki healing. You do a lot of things. It'd be hard to encapsulate you because you do memes, you do comedy, you got your YouTube channel, and you're out there just rocking it. But tonight we're going to talk about the science of crystals, and we're gonna go a little bit further into some sacred geometry and touch on some radionics. So I'm looking forward to borrowing your brain for tonight. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what business you do, and what do you want us to know about you before we get started?
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. And I've watched one of your other shows, Erika, and I enjoyed it. So yay. I think you're doing great, and look forward to seeing more of your videos.
Yes.
You could Google actually me and find out a lot of information about me, Victor Hamsa. But in essence, concerning crystals themselves, I owned a store in, gosh, it was over 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I sold a lot of crystals, rocks, and minerals, and I was into them before that. I have a varied background. I'm a Reiki master for 22 years now. I lived with the Lenape Indian tribe for 3 years up in the mountains of Pennsylvania, and learned shamanic ways from them. I'm a yoga teacher, certified, all these other, things that you could, put together. So when I got really into crystals, I started, learning about them, obviously, and then and then I started selling them. And then when you start selling them, people ask you questions, and you go, "Well, I don't know that. Let me go find out." So when you find out things, and then I had friends that had their own crystal stores, and I would tap into them and borrow their knowledge all the time, and go in there and oh, you disappeared. And I would end up going into warehouses filled of crystals and talking to a lot of people about it. So I have a lot of information about it. And a lot of the things that you get is just by practice and asking questions and learning about it. And to get into it, it's very, very interesting. Lately, I got more into, because I was curious about it, I got more into scientific aspects of crystals themselves. Like, why do they work? What's going on? So tonight, I think we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But in essence, I think they're, certainly, beautiful. And there's certainly beautiful different types that you could get. And I do sell them mostly now online, but I do on my website, victorhamsa.com. But I do have, I do vending where I'm out in the public and I get a table and I'll do different fairs on weekends. And I've been doing that for longer than 20 years. And if you see a display, I'll have thousands and thousands of dollars now up on my table. What I do is, because of my wholesaling license, I actually supply to major museums crystals and fossils. So there's some museums that I supply to, and my wife has a, she studied geology in college, and she goes and teaches rocks and minerals and geology with children. She has, a geology classes she does. So together, we kind of bring a lot of information and knowledge about crystals out there. I come more from the, I don't want to say new agey side, but more from that side, and she's more the physical aspects of it. But I think together we're a pretty interesting team. What I want to say from the beginning is that you don't need a crystal to be spiritual. It's a tool like anything else, and it's, I'm not a big proponent even of, crystals that take it away from anybody's spirituality, saying you need this, you need that. Like, it's like anything. Like, do you need a coffee to make it through the morning? No, you could probably get through the morning anyway without a coffee. But once you get, and here's what I'm going to talk about a little bit, once you get attuned to working with a crystal, then it's like having a coffee. Then you get your energy up, depending on the crystal that you're working with. And when I see people like coming to, if I had a store or coming to a booth or something, I see them pick up a crystal, and it's funny because people do the same thing. I think intuitively we feel to do it. You pick up a crystal, people close their eyes and they get quiet and they hold the crystal in their hand real tight and they squeeze it and they try to feel something, And to me, by knowing crystals and working them for so much, it takes really, to get to vibrate with the crystal correctly, it takes upwards sometimes an hour, 2 hours, So when people just pick up a crystal on my table and they hold it for a second and they go, "Oh, this one's not working," like, it's a lot of misperception, a lot of, there is no classes on it. So I do, I was invited to go into a women's group, and there was 25, I think, women, and they asked me to talk about crystals. I enjoyed learning about the scientific aspects. So I started talking about the scientific aspects for about 25 minutes. I think it all went over everybody's head. And there were a lot of, I guess in the crowd, there was a lot of shamans and everything, and it went way over their heads what I was saying. And they were like, they were asking me after it. They're like, "When you said this, did you mean that? When you said this?" I was like, yeah, 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 yeah. So it's like, I could give you a lot of information real fast, but to understand it, like, I want to make sure that you have a basis, with the things I say, because I could say things about crystals and it won't make any sense, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh. So I'll start off with a couple basic things, maybe, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
oh, wait a minute. I thought what you said was hilarious, though, holding it up and thinking that it was going to work instantly. But
yep.
it's crazy because we have them and they're so pretty, and you want everyone you see, because, you know, as you start to collect them. And I was going to say, this is it. When I first met Victor, he said, yeah, I got about this much thousand of dollars of crystals in my basement. I said, where's your basement? Right before she gets kidnapped, like. But just even talking about it, I'm like, oh God, I'm so excited. So
yeah, I got into fossils, and I was buying and selling some dinosaur eggs, which are pretty cool. And you were able to get them before from China before they closed the border for now exporting fossils. But to have a real dinosaur egg is friggin' cool if you could get one now. They're even harder to get. So, you know, I enjoy the fossils are really cool. And when I have a table, I put a fossil out and I'm like, well, this one's $50. And they're like, oh, and they like the pattern and everything. They pick it up and they go, and they're looking at it. I'm like, just be careful with it, you know? And they're like, okay. They're like, what is it? So I said, it's a fossil. So this is a representation of a fossil? I said, no, that's the real fossil from 300 million years ago. That's it. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're holding a real fossil. So there's like such a history, you know, involved with a lot of this, you know, pieces. And people don't, you know, when I sell a crystal and somebody has, I'm like, well, it's not like your iPhone or something. It's not going to wear out. You put it on a shelf and you can have it forever. It's a gift that keeps giving. It's not going to go away. But there is something to talk about that. But anyway, so I'll talk about a little bit about scientific aspects to give you guys a background. And I think it's super cool that there's actually science behind it. And my channel on YouTube is called the Spiritual Scientist Channel. So when I talk about this, I always try to make it in relatable concepts and link the science to what they call pseudoscience and kind of get that together. So when, for instance, when you have a crystal, quartz crystals are the most common, you know, crystals. When you think of a crystal, you're thinking the quartz crystal, you're thinking, you know, a nice clear rock. You know, it's made out of silicon dioxide. The earth is mostly made out of quartz crystals. So we have these quartz crystals. Literally, it's the most common thing on the earth, right? Like you'll be walking outside and I'll see, you know, there's a crystal on the ground. They're all over the place. Now sometimes they're not looking like this, but they're everywhere. Literally. Yeah, they're in granite, they're in rock, it's quartz. You know, a lot of quartz is everywhere. You know, and I have a funny meme. I said that the shaman in me wants to leave the crystals in the ground, but the light worker in me wants them on my altar, you know? So it's like when you find one, you just want it, you know? So, and that's why I say when somebody comes up to like a table or something I have, I say, whatever you're feeling attracted to is something that, you know, you want, obviously. But are you still there? Your picture disappeared. Okay.
I had to go in my room. I wanted to find this one.
Oh yes, sure. That's fool's gold in a way. That's yeah, I believe that's
It's a silver color, and I have to look back at a picture to find out what it was.
Yeah. So that's it. It's I sell that one too. It's pretty neat. That's that piece is going up in value slowly because it's a mineral. There's certain pieces I could tell you that will go up in value in another 10 or 20 years. They're running out of certain things. Anyway, so a crystal, works on, let's say you have, I'll give you an example, an RC camera, right? I mean, an RC car, you know, like a remote control car, correct?
You got it.
Right. So you have a remote control car. So in your remote control, you have a small miniature crystal, and in the car itself, you have a small crystal. So the only way that, you know, the radios work, when, you know, when Marconi invented the radio, they figured out that there's a small crystal they have, like shaped like a tuning fork, and it gives off something called the piezoelectrical effect. So when a crystal is squeezed, it gives off electricity, right? So when you have run electricity through the crystal itself of a certain modulation, it gives it, the crystal vibrates. Now the crystals, all quartz crystals vibrate at 36,882 times per second.
Would that be what we consider frequency?
Well, right. So that is how much a crystal vibrates per second. It actually has a measurable, you know, frequency. And this frequency is something that's known to always resonate this amount for this long a period of time. So that's how we get quartz watches. We actually take a quartz watch and it uses a crystal, and they actually take a little bit of electricity and touches a crystal, and that's how it tells accurate time. So the accurate time is done through quartz crystals. So that's why we have quartz watches. It'll say, oh, this one works on quartz versus an automatic watch. If it wasn't for crystals, most of the electronics, your phone, most of the things in the world wouldn't work, because we have quartz in it that vibrate at a frequency. Now, just to explain it from the beginning, so you have your RC car, right? So now you have your RC remote. Now that you have it connected to a battery with a circuit board. So the circuit board, you input information if you want to go forward or back or sideways into the remote. The remote itself with the circuit board takes that information, translates it into electricity. The electricity goes to the modulator that vibrates that small bit of crystal, quartz crystal. It's a wafer, very thin wafer. It vibrates it. That sends out a vibration that goes into, you could think of it, goes through space, right? Now, the RC car has another crystal in it. It vibrates in sympathetic response to the vibration that's propagating through matter, and it takes that information and it translates it with its card into movements that the car will do. So in essence, using this analogy, if you take a quartz crystal, what you're doing is you're applying electricity to it. It's vibrating at a frequency, and it gives off a sympathetic frequency. So this frequency vibrates at a higher rate, and it goes through matter. It gets to another crystal that translates it back down, let's say a dimension, you see, and that gives it to movement to the car. So continuing with this analogy, someone that was doing, for instance, crystal healing would take, they're attuned for that energy, that frequency of healing. They would take a crystal and then they vibrate with that crystal. The crystal, then that vibration permeates through the crystal. It goes again using the same thing. It goes through matter, then it vibrates into the person's aura, and then that affects the healing, you see. So in essence, it's the same thing. Now, what a lot of people
Well,
don't.
one second. 1 second, because so what you're saying is as the healer tunes in with the crystal and the healing properties that they have, the gift that they have combined with the crystal to help the person. Is that what you're saying? It goes through to the person?
Well, what happens is different crystals vibrate differently. So think of space as being empty. We're 99.9% empty space, and the 1.01% that's there, they can't find it, right?
Right.
So,
The gray.
so everything's empty space. So you have a crystal, and the crystal has a lactate matrix of it's made in a shape, in a manner that translates. If you look at the tip of a crystal, you see it looks like it's going from something lower to higher, right? So it's the very shape itself translates a vibrational frequency from a lower to a higher frequency. And then when it gets to its target, if someone knows how to do vibrational frequency, what they're doing is they're lending their own vibration to it to give it that kind of a direction. So it's like if you have somebody that is holding a crystal and they're not attuned for it, it's the same thing as having that RC car remote but you don't have the right battery connected to it. You see, it's not going to do much to it because you don't have the right energy going with it. If you don't have the right energy going through it and with it, it's not going to do much. For some people, they pick up a rock, it's a rock. For other people who are attuned to work with crystals, like there's literally people that are called crystal energy light workers, healers, those people, I would think many of them have the attunement that they figured out how to work with their energy and a certain crystal to affect some type of a healing. So
it's like it sounds like when you do things with intention.
Well, right. So matter's programmable. That's what we've discovered with the Copenhagen effect with the double slit experiment. When somebody observes a particle going through the double slit, if somebody's observing, then it goes through two slits, and it's either a wave or it's a particle. So then it's a particle. But when no one's observing it, then it's a wave. So when you have your observation, then you could lend yourself to affect something in that way. So for instance, if someone's more of a meditator, if someone takes the time out of the regimen every day to affect their mind, where they focus more of their willpower consistently in a narrow beam of focus, then those people are more readily able to do things of this nature than people who don't do self-work. Then those people aren't doing those kind of things. I just heard myself. We have a little feedback.
Oh, you did? We can hear it. It sounds fine.
Oh, okay. Okay, it went away. So just to tell you about that. So when crystals themselves are neat. Again, they're neat tools. It's not for everybody, it's not a must all be all, and you don't have to have it's literal science. You don't have to have belief in it as well. It helps to bridge the gap between you know, faith helps to bridge the gap between, you know, the knowledge and the action. If you don't have the faith, then you're not going to bridge that gap of between the seen and the unseen. It's just not going to happen.
I
So
get
if you have,
like you don't have
if
to
you
know
have,
how the radio works to turn it on and play music.
you don't, you
Yeah.
could have a crystal and you could use it.
Mhm.
Like for instance, me, when I got so attuned for it, I can't put a crystal, you know, with me and sleep with it. I won't go to sleep. It'll keep me up. I just can't sleep. So I like, I'll be going to bed and it's 1 a.m. I'm tossing and turning like, why can't I sleep? And I realized I left the crystal on my nightstand right next to my head. So I have to get up literally and put it 5 feet away from me. Otherwise I can't sleep, because what happens is your brain has brain waves. You have alpha, you know, there's, you know, delta, and certain brain waves that you have as, and then if it locks my pattern of frequency for my brain waves, a crystal will, if it's near me, will lock me into a waking state. And then I can't sleep. I can't go into a sleep state because I'm too awake. So there are certain, for instance, crystals work with frequencies, and your brain wave is a frequency, works on frequencies as well. So when you're matching your frequency, your brainwave frequency, which doesn't just stay in your head. There's actually an area around your head where it's outside of your head. They know that for a fact. And there's something with Carillion photography that they can actually show that. That was done by Dr. Carillion back in the 70s, a Russian doctor. That's you have that, you have electromagnetic field, and your electromagnetic field is changed by your frequencies that your thoughts are giving out patterns. And if you're, for instance, if I'm locked into a frequency because I have a crystal near me, and then I'm in a higher frequency of awareness, I can't sleep. I got to put that crystal away from me, otherwise I can't sleep, to give you an example. So, you know, I am working with crystals obviously a lot, and certain crystals give off certain vibrational frequencies that do certain things. So for instance, Damberite, which is a new crystal that I worked with, Damberite's a really interesting crystal. And it's very interesting that when you get a certain crystal and you Google it, or don't want to just give shout outs to Google, when you go on when you go on your whatever it is that you want to use, your search browser, I'm thinking not Ask Jeeves, I'm thinking another one. But anyway, when you go on and search it, you'll find information about it. And then when you go on 5 or 6 websites and you look at it, they all seem to say the same thing about certain crystals. You're like, where'd they get this, you know, information? But it's just basically intuitive people worked with it, and then they figure out, and then you share it with somebody else who's intuitive, and eventually it makes its way out in a page and somebody writes it up, and that's how we know certain crystals do certain things. So for instance, Damberite says it's going to help you work with the angels to give you information. So I'm like, cool. So I'll put it in my pocket and I forget about it, and I'll go in a regular place and I'm working. And then people ask me a question, and all of a sudden I feel myself, you know, filled with a lot of patience. I'm answering questions, but I'm being very verbose. I'm going into detail where I normally wouldn't do that. So, well, it works in this way and it does this, and I have a lot of patience for people. I'm talking all day. I'm giving out information. I'm like, why am I giving out so much information? And they, oh wait, I had that crystal in my pocket. Oh, okay. Now that makes sense. That's what that crystal does. So it's kind of like funny when you find, like, for instance, I'll give you another example, hematite. Love hematite. And I know it's a grounding one. So I said, gee, I went out and I drank once years ago and had a bad hangover. I really don't drink. But I had a hangover. I said, oh, so I just picked up a nice chunk of hematite and put on my third eye, and instantly my hangover is gone. So if you ever want to get rid of a hangover, just pick up a piece of hematite, put it on your third eye. And I've tried it again when that happened to me, and it is gone. It's amazing how that works. But again, you have to be attuned for it. But once you're attuned, when you're there, it works. So it's just everything works. You know, you have to everything takes practice, right? So but saying about, you know, I talked about Danbury a little bit. I gave you a great example about that. Now, let's go into maybe a couple of things. Interestingly enough, I gave you a couple of pictures made with a slideshow.
Yes.
You want to do the flower of life to start with? That's really neat.
Okay.
And you have it in your picture.
I got some pictures for you.
You have some pictures.
Yes, I do.
You got pictures, we got answers.
Yeah. So you say Gamberite?
No, let's put in the flower of life to start, maybe.
Oh, the flower of life. There you go at the bottom. Is that?
Yeah, there's my baby. So the flower of life. So you know, for instance, once I was meditating, I really got into I was laying in my bed and I got into the spirit. And when I got in the spirit, I could see into matter, and I could see energy, and I see energy in my room. So I see different colored lights like in the Matrix, but instead of it just being green, it's all different colors. So I'm seeing it. So I sat up in bed and I said, Father, what am I looking at? You know, to God. And then the wall in front of me changed, and the wall became the flower of life, a beautiful golden flower of life, just like you see in this picture. So God answered me by saying that the flower of life is that. And I never really paid attention to flower of life. I didn't know about it that much. You'd be surprised till that happened to me. I think it was 10 or 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote an article about it. But then I said, what is the flower of life? And then it's the basis for all matter. It's the basis building block for all matter. So all matter is within the flower of life. So within that, we get our alphabet, we get all platonic solids, we get all the things within it, we get crystals, all these things are within the flower of life. So that's the basis of sacred geometry. Everything comes from those things. So first we had the circle, and then it goes to 2 circles, Venus, Pisces, and it goes, you know, from there on. So if we look at, you know, sacred geometry, you'll see certain sacred geometry forms that are made up of, you know, the flower of life. And then if you go to the next, maybe we'll fast forward to the next one with the green background there, with the yeah, that one over there.
Oh.
So, did I hurt you?
There you
So
go.
that one right there, right? So that is an example of, it's like, it looks a lot like the flower of life. So one of a higher vibrational frequency crystal that I was taught about 25 years ago is phenakite. One of my favorite crystals to work with. The crystal is such a high vibrational crystal that even I don't like to carry around all the time, you know, because here's one thing: you don't have to have your frequency so high all the time. It's sometimes good to have a lower frequency. You'll hear people in the spiritual community talk about that, and they'll say, oh, you need to raise your frequency, raise your frequency. With me, I'm like, well, I need to lower my frequency. My frequency is too friggin' high. So this is a high vibrational crystal. And then I said, after a while, I said, why is it such a high vibrational crystal? It doesn't make sense to me. What is the science behind it? So I started looking at the atomic structure. And wouldn't you know it, the atomic structure, it looks like the flower of life. So I said, that is the reason. That makes sense. So when it is in the structure of the crystal, the flower of life, of course, it's a higher vibrational frequency crystal. Of course. How could that make sense to me? Right?
Right.
It's like, how would this not tie together? So if we look at the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio, when you look at these things, when you look at a plant and you see it has the Fibonacci sequence throughout it, and you're like, in the golden ratio, and you're like, okay, this makes sense. So all matter is based on this.
You
So
mean
all matter comes from this. So when we have a harmonious frequency, when I go out into the woods, that's when I feel the frequency raise. When I'm out in the woods, when I'm out in the forest, when I'm out in nature, because it's naturally, there's natural resonances there, and it's a natural Fibonacci sequences everywhere. It's a natural life everywhere. If you look at the bee or the scarab, insects are certainly close to the earth. They're close to the ground. They're made up of, if you look at it, ratios of the Fibonacci sequences, making them, their beings. So that's where you get the snail over there in the picture. So that's the, golden ratio. That's the Fibonacci sequence. So it's 1, 3, 5, and then what you do is you always take the last two numbers, you add them together, you see, and you get the next number in the sequence. So that's how we get the ratio. So it naturally lends itself to a pattern. So the pattern of our universe is the Fibonacci sequence. Now, we could have a different universe, maybe that we could see with a telescope, that can have a different pattern to it. So for instance, when you look at the Milky Way, it's a spiral galaxy. That spiral galaxy from the macrocosm goes to the microcosm when we look at spiral frequencies, and we will look at crystals. So when you go from the macro of the spiral galaxy down to a seashell, we see the same forms involved. So when you look at the small to big, it makes sense. Now we could go, maybe if one day we could get to another galaxy that's based on a different frequency, we might find different life there, different patterns, because that frequency of that universe is different. So we could actually see with our telescopes. By the way, there's a great conjunction going on tomorrow, but
Yes.
if we could see, what's that?
I said, yes, there is.
Yes. If we go out and we look at another universe where it's not based on a spiral, but it might be based on a different pattern, then my guess would be the life within that universe is coming from its central black hole, taking that frequency differently, and maybe it's basing life in a different, or matter or energy in a different way. So that would make sense. If there is life in another galaxy and it's based on a different galaxy that we could perceive on the macrocosm, my guess would be, if there's life in that galaxy, it would be the same on the microcosm as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, now I see what you're saying. Yeah, but micro and macro, because we seldom think about the atomic structure anymore. Once you get out of chemistry, no one, I'm not sitting here thinking about the atomic structure anymore.
Well, here's something really interesting too. If you look at an atom, which they are still having problems looking at atoms, we kind of got the idea. They're basically looking at two interlocking vortexes. It looks like a Merkaba. So if you look at atoms themselves down at the Planck scale, they look at like we're looking at Merkabas. Now, if you look at a Merkaba, that is the same basis building block that's making up.
Ooh. Are you talking about this one stone like this?
Right. So that,
Yeah, okay.
that translates to, you know, the triangle translating, you know, lower and higher, you know, dimensional frequencies as well. So, and that's interlocking Merkaba. So our reality in a way is made up of this in the atom scale, but which when it goes raises up is working on the flower of life, which is working throughout the pattern of flower of life is Fibonacci sequences, which I've just described. So I'm basically giving you from macro to micro and micro to macro. DuckDuckGo, that's the search engine I was talking
Yeah.
So it's all pretty interesting. And I'll give you something. What do you think so far? Do you have any questions about anything?
Well, I think no, it helps you understand. If you actually start thinking about the atomic structure of the crystal, you can understand the frequency, you can understand the vibration, you understand why they're important and why they have such power. So, I mean, that sounds spot on. And then I know I did want to see this like with the flower, and with the shell, these patterns that you're talking about. When we see these things in nature, you know, even when you think about the elements, the chart of elements, and you think about the fact that this adds up to 100% over the course of the universe. There's iron, there's lead, there's gold, you know, but they all have a percentage or a ratio in the universe, and they add up to 100%. How perfect is that? You know, that's a perfect design. So
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I'll tell you something else about crystals. This will blow your mind. You ready?
oh boy, I'm ready.
Uh-oh. I'm just gonna out myself. So I have this quartz crystal. So I was just holding it, you know, and you could say meditating, but I was holding it in one room. I think maybe I did a video. I was holding it, and this is like a really nice one. Anyway, I went into the other room. I think I was trying to effect healing on myself. I had shoulder surgery, and I was just holding it and vibrating with it, you know, and then I left it in the bathroom one side of my house. I went in the other side of my house, and to get my mind off the pain, because I had shoulder surgery and I was trying not to do these drugs they give you for
Right.
painkillers. I was on a game anyway and making a pattern of a hexagonal pattern. So I was tracing a hexagonal pattern. I let my mind, you know, go blank and concentrated on that hexagonal pattern and formed it in different shapes, the hexagonal pattern, and stared at it, you know, and made it into working on the like an AutoCAD in the game, and just focused on that for a while, right? When I go back into the bathroom where I left the crystal, like I said, 20 minutes later, I looked at the crystal and I noticed that, I don't know if you could see it, that there's right underneath the 60, I don't know if you could see it. So now there's a hexagon on the face of the crystal
Huh.
that wasn't there before.
You placed a crack in there, you know, like
What
created a design.
right. So what I tended to think was I went in sympathetic response with the crystal. Then I go in another room and I focused on that pattern. It vibrated the crystal and etched itself, the pattern, onto the face of the crystal of what I was intending. So I vibrated the crystal so hard, it literally etched itself into the crystal, and I have proof right there.
Wow.
So
could it have been the opposite though? Could it have been that pattern attached itself to you?
there, you could see it there, right? Yeah.
Victor, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Could it have worked in reverse though? That that you said, is it hectagonal shape or
Yeah, it's 6-sided. So
yeah,
hex is 6. So
could it have been
oct is 8.
that you received, like maybe you receiving a message versus you sending a message? Could it have been in the opposite way? Or you really feel that?
I don't think so. I went in the other room and I was creating this hexagon for literally a half an hour. So with my, it just ended up being there. I don't think I received anything that way. No, actually, being a crystal healer,
Right.
it works on the same way that, you use a crystal, you get into that frequency and you send an intention through matter and it gets to the receiving end, and then they affects the healing for them. So for instance, there's new healing modalities that they're using for cancer these days. So what they do is we're using sounds. So they take these 2 sounds, they modulating the frequencies, and they find out where the cancer is in somebody, and where the modulation hits inside their body, it creates the one frequency, it's a high one, and another frequency goes a different one. When they meet at that one point, it breaks up the cancer, right? So that's because they're out of sympathetic response. I had kidney stones, so I had lithotroscopic surgery. So what they do is they vibrate sound waves through your body so hard it breaks up the crystal kidney stone within my body. So that's how they do it. They use sound waves. So sound waves and crystals work together, and certainly sound is just a vibration. So they use vibrations and crystals to do a lot in the healing work in hospitals already. It's when somebody comes out there holding a big crystal and says, "Hey, can I do some healing work for you?" They go, "You are crazy. Get out of here." What are you talking about?
I love this somatics video, how they're using the sound to reach, and they create these shapes, these waves.
Right. So somatics and waves of vibrations are something that people have discovered a long time ago. It's gotten rediscovered, and a lot of people got into spirituality and kind of rediscovered this again. And that's doing some, funky stuff right there with the water moving around.
Yeah.
But if you look at shows like, they had one episode in The Big Bang Theory where they were having really fun with it, where you could take certain magnetic water and they do that. And there's some of the, in Tibet, they found these scrolls, and they said that these Tibetan monks would move these rocks, these giant rocks, and they couldn't discover how they did it, but they would have 116 of these Tibetan monks, and they would all stand in a semicircle around the rock. Some of them would have instruments, and some of them would just use their voice.
Ooh.
And they said that they vibrated the noise a certain way to make the rock would levitate and move it, so they can make these monolithic structures. So they actually discovered recently these manuscripts showing the people in a semicircle and giving instructions on how to do that, to make the rocks move. If they all did a certain noise at a certain moment, they would move these rocks to move, like, I'm talking like tons. They would lift it up and move it and drop it, and lift it up, move it and drop it. So I always thought that stuff's very interesting.
That looks like the Tesla.
Yeah, that one's Tesla, where Tesla said everything is vibration and frequency, right?
Yeah.
Once we discover the secrets of vibration and frequency will discover the secrets of the universe. And he said 3, 6, and 9 as well. So 3, 6, and 9 is it was in those frequencies, and it's all, you know, tied together. Oh, here's another one. What was that? That was a
Oh, you
that
wanted
was a weird one. No, no, that's fine.
I saw that. Yeah, this is just great. I love that video. So
Yeah, it's interesting.
yeah. And it's actually
So,
the music, it sounds good too. You can really vibe on that music.
right. There's a cave that they found in Rome, ancient Rome, and it was underwater, but recently was discovered, and the cave itself vibrates at 111 hertz. So somehow the cave itself vibrates, and it's in a wall. So what they figured out is it was basically all underwater, but when people would go, and if they have cancer, they would go in there and they lay down and the cancer would disappear. They would have to go in there and lay there for 8 hours a day for a week, and the cancer would disappear because of this frequency that was naturally given off in this cave.
Mm. What do you know about the Gregorian monks then?
Well, Gregorian monks are from a lineage of the Pope Gregory, and Pope Gregory gave us a couple of interesting things. Pope Gregory gave us the rosary beads, which he got from the mala beads. So mala beads he did that, and the Gregorian monks are known for their chants, and they sound really, really neat.
And it's called, I think it's the God tone. When you look up God tone and Gregorian monks, like these are healing tones and healing frequencies. That's how I actually found that semantic video, is looking up the God frequency, the God tones. Because our music today is at a certain frequency that's not actually harmonious with our body. And, you know, so
well,
music that we listen
right.
to radio is not necessarily good for us. It doesn't actually put out this positive tone. And so I had someone do some kinesiology with me. I think I'm saying it right. And she put certain things next to me. And if she, you know, asked me to like raise my hand, and if she moved my hand, it would feel like she was breaking my wrist, like she was breaking my bones. But then when you have that God frequency playing, she couldn't move my hand and I didn't have pain. So just like you're saying, you know, that vibration, it's very powerful.
And then there's right. So all music is played on 440, I believe, hertz, and the 432 is actually the number that's supposed to be at. I was decided to do that. And if you look at, there's different frequencies. 7.82 hertz is a certain frequency there that's known for its being in tune with what you would be calling, you know, a higher frequency as well. So when you have these kind of, you know, to get back to crystals, when you have certain crystals, you know, they give off, you know, a tone. What was recently, I want to say recently discovered, or changed or whatever, but within the pineal gland, they've discovered that there's these, and within the part of the ear, within the pineal gland are small crystals. So you see, you have a small crystal within your brain, right?
Right.
And if you're drinking certain water, you're drinking you know, fluoride, you're doing a lot of certain toxicities in your body, then you're clogging your pineal gland, you're calcifying your pineal gland, and the crystals within your body, in your brain, that lead to the higher chakras are not working, they're calcified. So that is one reason why people aren't able to access the higher aspects of self and awareness and all the things I'm talking about. Why all this information's hidden is because their pineal glands are calcified is one reason. And a lot of that done is in the fluoride in the water. I can't tell you for sure if it's on purpose or not, but I see them pouring the fluoride in the water and putting in the toothpaste. So somebody knows something, and somebody's not wanting to know something. So I'm not going to talk about conspiracies, but
Yeah.
if you had a detoxed pineal gland, you're probably watching this video nodding your head with me all the time. And if your pineal gland is calcified, then you're like, what's this guy talking about? It went over my head. I don't know what he's saying.
For quinine, at one point I received a message saying that decalcifies. So anything that the medicines that say Plaquil or, you know, quinine are decalcifying agents. So it became this thing of, oh, why don't they want us to have hydrochloroquine? Oh, it will decalcify our pineal glands. They don't want us running around here being geniuses. Type things, you know.
Well, that's certainly, you know, you have the ability to raise your IQ. You know, you're taught in school when you grew up, they tested you, said, okay, my IQ's this and that's it. You know, I don't believe in that. And I've done enough research where I know that you can raise your IQ. You're not stuck with one IQ. So the more you're trying to tell me that if somebody doesn't read a whole libraries full of books, they're not going to make themselves smarter. You know, it's just everything's about limiting you, limiting your vibration, limiting your intelligence, limiting you. And what I'd like to do as a healer, as someone out there in the spiritual community, is tell people that, you know, they have limitless potential and see how far you could go with it. Because if you think that you only have an IQ of 100, that's the average IQ for most people, and then you can't do anything and that's it, you know, but there's always way to expand your consciousness. There's always ways to educate yourself more, to learn more, you know, to apply these, you know, sleep better, you eat better, you detoxify yourself, and you're going to be raising your IQ point right there a couple. And then you know, do certain things, you're going to raise it a little bit more, you're going to get 10 or 20 IQ points higher, you know, within 6 months to a year if you keep at it. You know, do puzzles all the time. There's certain things you could do. Well,
Because
what's that?
they make it seem when you're 40, your memory is lost. When you're 40, your eyesight is lost. And for me, that's something huge that I struggled with was the memory. And for me, what I noticed was, oh, you don't have the nutrition to create new neural pathways because they're trying to say that new brain cells can't be formed, but that's not true. You just have to give your body what it needs to create new brain cells and create new neural pathways. Like you have to actually literally use this and work on it, and then it'll create new pathways, new memories, and you'll be able to retain information. Because I know from 2016 to now, I know that my mind has gotten a lot better than it was.
Well, right. I mean, you have to take what science says is with a grain of salt, because they'll say one thing one day and the next day they're saying something else. You know, like they're saying, you know, cake's bad for you, and then a year from now they'll say, you know what, if you eat cake every day, you're going to live longer. You know, you
like coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. They're saying coffee's really bad for you, and then they'll say another article says coffee's great for you. So like somebody asked me the other day, you know, in fact, yesterday, a younger person, so when you're out of your prime, when are you out of your prime? What's your prime? I'm like, I'm in my 50s. I'm just hitting my prime now.
Right.
I don't put a limit, if you put a limit on it, then you have a limit. It's all, a lot of this is self-imposed. For instance, you know, I started running at in the lockdown. I had to stay home. I got up to running 7 miles a day, and it, you know, I can, 3 or 4 years ago, I could only run half a mile. But you build yourself up, you push yourself, and then you end up doing these things. But you don't just start. Well, a lot of people is, especially in the spiritual community, you'll have a lot of people that say, and I try to teach meditation, by the way. So if you want it, and I try, I say I try. So I teach meditation. Hello. So if you want to do a meditation with me for free on the Zoom, that's great. If you want to learn, that's great. And I offer certificates through Yoga Alliance that recognizes it as a real class and modality. And we'll give you credits for Yoga Alliance. And eventually, I have 3 levels. You could go through the different yoga certifications, and you can actually get to a level and teach yoga, teach meditation yourself to others. And you can actually make a living teaching meditation. Like, it's a real thing. Like, if you have a certificate from me, you could go to a corporation and say, hey, I'd like to take, you know, there's a lot of stress in your, because of COVID, there's a lot of stress. Maybe it'd be good for your company to do meditation for an hour a day, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of call for it.
Healthy
What's that?
healthy employees create higher attendance, less use of the
Right.
medical insurance, and a higher rate of, or is it a lower rate of people calling in sick? So
Right. There's something called too.
Behind on that. So
Right. I mean, there's something to all this about the placebo effect. Like, you know, there's people that they, even with the C vaccines, they have a placebo effect that they were giving out. So they take a control group, they take this group, and they take a control group and they give them a fake vaccine, and they watch for the response. And people are having responses like they got, you know, there's like a 20% of people that had the COVID fake vaccine, and they throwing up, like they got an injection of saline, and they're throwing up more. They, you know, and it's just like your brain can make, your brain is in charge of your body, and if you let it, and once you learn to control your brain through meditation, then you have a lot more things available to you than not. So, and imagine, you know, there's a placebo effect, but imagine if you actually can, you know, make things happen with your own, you know, within your body, then you know, you're doing better and you can help yourself. And the thing about, I wanted to say about doing healing is, it's like what Jesus said with, you know, a glass being empty and then you can receive abundance. It's when you're full of healing for yourself, when you're healed, that's when you should really try to affect healing with other people, right? When you have issues, when you have problems, when you have big problems, you know, I don't recommend trying to do healing for other people, you know.
yes.
And I've been doing this for a long time. So I have Reiki masters, I have healers that come to me for advice all the time. So I'm pretty well known. You could Google me. I'm listed on with gurus worldwide and all this kind of fun stuff. But I have spiritual teachers that come to me for counseling, and you know, everybody has issues. But if you have issues, you know, try to take a step back, and you know, you got to work on yourself. I worked in the psychological, you know, community. I worked in doing psychotherapy for a number of years in a hospital, and you'd be surprised at how many people got into that because they had psychological issues themselves. So it's the healers are the ones that actually got hurt and self-healed, and now they could affect healing to other people, right? So those are the ones that are the best healers, are the ones that got hurt themselves, but they healed, and now they have more so they could give it to other people. So when people, there's a lot of people out there that are fake, unfortunately, a lot of people that think they could do things and not doing things, are self-deluded. But I think that if you're able to be honest and help people in that way, that's the best way. So to not be, broken yourself, because you don't want to hurt others by, you don't want to hurt others by, if you don't want to use a broken crystal and try to do a healing is what I'm saying, what I'm saying? You're just going to send that brokenness out there, and it's not going to
Most
help.
definitely, because I think we talk about before, well, some others and we talked about, as you pass on energy, there's actually vampire energy or different kinds of energy. If that person's energy, if your energy is lower than the person you're trying to help, you're actually going to drain their energy when you're in their presence. If your person is struggling.
I have a lot of that going on. There's a lot of these people that don't know what they're doing, and they're not qualified, and they're saying they'll do a healing for people, and they can make it worse. And they, and then they're vampires and they don't know it. And
right.
Some of them are, and I'll end up getting, tapped. I used to get tapped for a website that would do distance healing, and they would send me the ones that were hard cases. They're like, there's 300 distance healers that can't help this person. Here, we're sending it to you. I'm like, oh, great, thanks. But it's there's a lot of self-delusion going on with it, and it's not regulated. Unfortunately, I don't think that anybody should get a distance healing from anybody unless they're at least Reiki 2. At least if they can't show you a certificate, I wouldn't, use that, number one. And it's just, unfortunately, it's not a lot of, regulation. And then I have people that say to me all the time, teach me how to, do it. I'm like, okay, well, I want to have a retreat and then I can show you, but you really need to be with me kind of in person to get attunements. It's hard to do attunement from distance for somebody else. If somebody's like, I have a friend of mine that's a follower for me a long time, and now that person is able to do healing, but they've been just following me for years and years and years, and enough of me basically rubbed off on them. You get it eventually, but enough of my vibration rubbed off. You know what I mean? But you can't. And
two things I would say about that is, like you say, a lot of people, they're delusional. They don't even understand their own frequency. So they're just looking at this for money. But even, for myself, what I noticed, even as a person who was going out to start to do public speaking, that whole day, I give myself like a nice bath, and I separate myself from other people, and I have to build up my energy. If I'm going to give positive energy to someone else when I'm even speaking, I have to kind of do some things for myself before I can really go give to others. So you're right. Like, you can't come around dilapidated and broken down, and you just had an argument with your boyfriend or your husband and think you're going to go heal somebody because, you're emotionally drained and you can't help somebody else. And hopefully you would take it seriously enough that you would empower yourself and pour into yourself before you go try to put your hands on other people, because you can really destroy their little energy field, right?
Yeah, and the other thing that I came to recently, to know about is that if I'm at the real taking in that Christ consciousness, if I'm at that level where I'm working on that level and somebody's coming to me for healing and they are filled with negativity and they're, telling me, they're saying to me, like, I think I have a demon in me, or I think I have, bad spirits or something. If you're not trying to help yourself, you see, then you're just not going to you're in a negative state. You're just not going to receive, you're not going to receive it if you're not in the right way, like if you have a
conversation twice today where if you're trying to offer something good to somebody who only sees bad right now, they're not gonna see it, feel it, hear it. They can't even absorb it because that's where they want to be right now. It's so overwhelming to them. That's where they want to be right now. And you got to kind of probably give them a cool down, don't you? Like, do you really want to receive this? Do you really want to move forward and heal from this?
Right, like what I'm saying, if my frequency's so high and then they're around and they're coming to me for healing, and all of a sudden they're saying, I'm feeling pain in my head. And I'm like, well, maybe you should seek forgiveness before you're coming to me for some healing. Maybe you should do some asking Jesus for forgiveness. Maybe you should do some self-work, something, you don't just go to the top of the mountain and go to the Buddha and say, hey, look at me, you gotta climb that mountain, you gotta get there. And people can ask for the healing, it's fine, but it's just, you need to work on you need to be honest and open, and especially I did a lot of healing with people, and then in some healing I'll do the same healing with one person, and then the next person, it's the same issue, do the same healing, it doesn't work. So then after I got good at it, I started asking questions, be like, the second person, it didn't work. I'm like, let me guess, you have a relative into black magic, right? And they'd be like, yeah, how'd you know? I'm like, okay, that's blocking the healing. You have a generational curse going on.
Or
and they're like,
some people have done things for you and prayed for you, things that you don't even know that they've put in contracts. So I didn't know we were going to get into this, but some people have prayed for you and put in contracts for you that you didn't ask for and maybe you don't even know about. Because I know for myself, I had to do like a 21-day Archangel Michael prayer to let go of, to break any contracts, anything anybody else has ever put on me, because you got to be careful what people pray for you, wish for you. You got to be careful all the stupid things you say out of your mouth.
well, I started getting into all these demonic alien implant kind of removal and all this kind of stuff a couple years ago when I really got into healing again, and I got really into it, and I was just coming across it. Like, I never imagined 20 years ago I'd be talking to somebody trying to remove a demonic implant, like in an etheric level that's sucking out energy and all this other stuff. So I got really involved in that, and it can be, I try to not charge people anything. I'm doing healing for free all the time. But if somebody's saying to me, I need this, and and it's taking me, like, it's not going to just be an hour. It's going to be like 10 hours worth of work. I'll have to charge you $600, buddy. It's just, you're going to have to pay me in installments or whatever. And then people just are like, what? Because it's not like I'm trying to rip you off. It's just like, it's not just you're asking me for a 5-minute thing. If it's distance, it's taking like weeks worth of work,
Well,
and it's a lot of time and effort,
because you actually have to recover from that yourself.
Right. I can't do it for other people. And then I'm not causing abundance in my own life. If I'm charging somebody $600 for a couple of weeks worth of healing, I'm losing more than $600 of income out of my own personal life. That's happening. It's not like it's not like I'm not causing abundance in my own life because I'm giving it to somebody else. It's just the way it is. So I'm trying to do everything for free, and I try that because for a number of reasons. And I don't want people to think, there's a lot of negativity associated with money, and a lot of negativity associated with doing healing for money. And a lot of people looking at people and saying, oh, you're fraud, you're fake, none of this is real, and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, okay, it's free because I've been cyber stalked, I've been attacked, and you're trying to do oh yeah, a lot of times. In fact, all the time. And they say, oh, you think you're this, you're that. And I'm like, well, I've been to classes, I've trained. Back in the 90s, I spent over $3,000 all told going through all the healing classes and workshops, learning it and getting all the attunements. That was in the 90s, just for that alone. And then over time, I used to list myself online, doing it for free, and I would do 60 to 100 people a day, and that's how you get better at it. You don't just, it's like anything. You get better at it, and you get better at it, and you get better at it. But for people to just, want to come out and say, oh, I'll do it. I'm like, oh, really? Did you do 60 a day for 10 years? How much practice have you had? They're like, oh, I've never done it before. Like, there's a lot of effort and work and practice that goes into doing it before you get good at anything. And
Well, believing in what you do, the funny thing is belief is it's the most powerful thing. Because if the person believes in what you do, then they're correct. If they don't believe in what you do, they're correct. You're going to get what you want based on what you believe. And if you don't believe it, then it won't work for you. But I'm going to go back to this. Let's go back to some plants and these geometric shapes. And I've always heard as above, it is below. And it's amazing how the trees.
So is this a legal plant, mice? Is this a
Well, I was looking up here at
is this a legal
birds because the trees, they're like the lungs. There was one
Right.
I had, it was like the trees were like the lungs. And it's just talking about these geometric patterns, how it look, above the tree, below the tree. It's the same.
I was going to make a joke. I was going to say, is this a legal plant in my state? Is it legal in my state or not?
Yeah, it's not marijuana. So
Oh.
It's not a marijuana plant. So it's legal in my state though.
Right. And interestingly enough, did you know rice has more chromosomes and like DNA than humans?
No, that makes me look at it.
Yeah, rice is crazy. So rice has like, we have like 64 chromosomes. It has like 500. It's crazy how rice is so much more advanced. And here's the crazy thing about rice too. If you look at a plant, it's basically, they figured out with rice, it's like you took some kind of bean, and its head is in the bottom part. The head is in the ground, and that's where it doesn't have a brain, but that's where if it did have a type of brain with rice and such, with this plant, it would be at the bottom. It would be in the roots is where the brain would be. And you're looking at like the legs are up in the air, it's not really that way, but it's kind of, that's the way you could think of it. So the mouth, in a way, of the tree is in the earth, and we're looking at the legs in the sky. I think that's an interesting way to think of it in a way. Now, when you're looking at as above, so below, right? So I get into Mandela effects, but the recent change would be the so below would be the roots go to other roots, and they've discovered that trees can communicate even in the earth to other trees, and they communicate with the branches. They give off these pheromones almost, and it goes into the atmosphere. If one's getting attacked, one tree's getting cut, another tree is going to know this in the forest. The other trees react a certain way, so they're going to like change nutrients going through the bark to make its bark harder. They're doing all these things where before you could say science or it didn't exist. You know, as we raise in vibrational frequency, so do the plants, so do the trees. As above, so below. All these things happen as we raise in vibrational frequency. Our reality, the plants around us, all raise up in frequency as well.
So that would mean, like, as we get cell phones and more technology, so below, they communicate more as well. Because now what you're saying, how they were communicating underground, I was thinking how men and women have pheromones, and we can like telecommunicate sometimes, you know, because some of us have different frequencies bouncing off of each other. Like, wait a minute, what? I think that person's in distress or something. That the trees are communicating below ground with the same atmosphere.
Well, I'm not a proponent of that kind of technology. Like, for instance, I have a meme that has on the top half, it has a shaman, and the shaman saying, we need to get away from our phones and stop looking at our phones and enjoy nature. And then in the bottom half, you have Elon Musk smoking marijuana, and he's saying, I think all people should install phones into their heads. So that's what they're doing with this, you know, he wants to do with this, you know, put chips into people's heads, so you could communicate. You know, I don't think that we need a chip to talk with other people. If you want to be psychic, you know, detoxify yourself and love people more, and then you'll learn to be psychic and communicate with people without having to pick up the phone. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're there's two ways to go about it. There's the ascension is which we're having a big conjunction tomorrow, where people are more apt to learn how to communicate with others, even in a telepathic way, if they try to look inward and try to be more holistic versus having a cell phone installed into your head. Like, there's two ways that mankind's kind of going. We're going towards, you know, there's ones towards, you know, which Ray Kurzweil and these looking towards you know, synchronicity, they're saying, and robots and AI. And there's another way that we're saying that love is actually an answer. Love's the way to do it. You know, we don't need more technology. We already have enough technology. You know, we don't need these robots to do our thinking for us. You know, it might be good, like at my, you know, sometimes my job where there's a calculation involved and I have to do a long calculation, I'll end up taking a piece of paper out and a pencil and I'll write it out. Maybe it takes me a minute longer, but I'm using my brain instead of a calculator. You know, if I'm pressed for time, I'll take the calculator out, and then someone comes up to me, they see me with a pen and paper and writing out the equation. I'm like, how do you know how to do that? They don't know how to do it.
Wow.
They only know how to use the calculator. Well, it's like
next project.
Yeah.
It's like this. I have
Neuralink idea just scares the crap out of me.
I had a colleague years ago. He's a younger guy, and I'd say you have to get this you have to get this number, and you have to put this on this. He goes, okay, and he'd whip out his phone. It was a six-digit number, and he'd take a picture of it. And I'd say, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm taking a picture of it so I can remember it. So I said, it's only 6 digits. He said, yeah, I'm taking a picture. I said, why don't you try to memorize it? You know, he's a younger generation. Now he's growing up with a phone. So I didn't have a phone when I grew up. So I said, why don't you memorize it? He goes, memorize it? I can't memorize that. I was like, yes, you can. Well, I don't want to. So your memory is a reflex, you see. If you practice all the time memorizing 6-digit numbers and carry them in your head for a while, you're going to be better at memorizing things. But for him, he only takes pictures of things and looks at it later. He doesn't try to memorize things. So what he's doing is he's using his phone as an augmented way of thinking, so he doesn't have to use his internal brain of thinking. He's using his phone already as a cybernetic assistant to help him do his thinking for him. So people don't realize how much they've let themselves slip away, when you should be actually applying as much of this on a daily basis as you can. So whenever I have to memorize a phone number and somebody says, here, write my phone number down, I'm trying to memorize it instead and say, no, I got it. And like, what?
Wow.
And I'm like,
I don't know the last time I tried to remember anybody's number, but you know what? I remember our first phone number from when I was 5 years old.
right. But
474651. But don't call these people. I don't know who they are. But I remember from 5 years old. That's like well over 30 years ago.
Right. There you go. If you try, though, I'm saying if you try, it's better than not trying. If you try, what if you memorize the first 3 digits and just let yourself memorize the next 3? You know, and say, okay, I got the prefix, I know that, and I know the next 3, and the last 4, just memorize that too. And then you have the number. You know, you got to fool yourself into memorizing, because you actually can do it, but you have to, people saying, I can't do it, and you're not going to be able to do it if you can't do it. But if you say to yourself, well, I'll just do the first half and the middle half, and then I'll just memorize the last half. And then you have the phone number in your head. There's long-term memory, short-term memory, but you're not going to have, you're going to, you know, and this gentleman I'm talking about that takes pictures of things, he has a horrible memory. And you'd think, when I was talking to him, and I talked to the younger generation, you'd think like they don't remember things. And I'm like, don't you remember that? And they go, no, because they're not working on short-term memory. Their long-term memory shot too.
You've been trained not to try. You just take a picture of it. I mean, maybe 10 years ago, I was in class and I was like, oh, why should I even write notes? I'll just take pictures of the notes on the board. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
If you'll ever go back and look, but if you do write it
nobody's
down,
looking at the pictures anyway.
Nobody's looking at the pictures. Plus, you know, I've always been told too during business classes that they say, just write it down. If you write it down, you got way better chances of memorizing that. So let's hit this. Let's hit radionics. Is it radionics? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, a little close.
Oh, tell me.
Well, I think you're talking, you know, that is in the category, if you Google it, in pseudoscience, is radionics. And radionics is the science of taking these kind of things, or psionics is taking a crystal or a grid work or something like that. And then you would somehow you're able to, you know, affect something on it from a macro to micro scale. Now,
Well, we didn't
Now,
even talk about that grid work.
right. So I'm talking about that now too. And
Okay.
I'm not a big, like, I know you really want to learn about grid work. So I know I'm going to disappoint you a little bit, but what I'm saying is if you don't have the battery plugged into that RC adapter, then you're not going to, get that remote control working. If you don't have, the faith based in the right way, you don't have the belief, you don't have the detox pineal gland, you don't have done the self work, then having, a grid work and having these crystals lined up in a certain geometrical shape is just looking pretty, right?
Right.
So if you
Use this for grid work?
Well, it's a powerful, image showing the literal matrix of our reality. But what I'm saying is that a real, ascended master, doesn't need, crystals, doesn't need grid work, doesn't need any of this. You don't really need anything. And
Right.
like I said at the beginning, all this, crystal stuff is just like extra.
Right.
But if you have if you feel a sympathetic response to working with certain crystals, and if you feel intuitively putting it in a grid in a certain manner, and then if you take those two things and you combine them with a certain chant or a certain intention to affect something, is it going to affect it in a way that you think? It might affect it in a way that you don't think. You're taking things from one level and trying to, from one scale and making it work on a different scale. And it depends on how you've worked with those kind of things before. So if you've worked with something small and then you work, scale up and you practice and you spend a long time on it, then maybe you'll get something out of it, like with anything, and you practice. But what I see is a lot of people saying, oh, how's this one work? And they'll put all the things down and everything else. And then, they automatically, like it's a machine. Oh, let's get it going, but there is something to say, like, so there's something called orgone energy, right? There's organ. So there's this guy that came out with this, and what he did was, he discovered there's like, he wanted to say it's like a fifth, at the time, fifth state of matter. So there's, orgone energy in the atmosphere. And then he was trying to harness it to actually use for electrifying machines. And he was ended up making these machines, orgone machines. And so a lot of this stuff got translated into, now they're using orgone pyramids and orgone, shapes. And what they'll do is they take, a lot of these, they'll take a copper and they'll lay it down. And a lot of times what they're doing is they take the certain crystals, and they'll just, like that one, and you'll mesh it up, and then they put filling with it. I've looked at this. So they take like aluminum filling with it, and then you take these crystals, certain crystals, maybe higher vibrational crystals, and the basis is copper, and they'll put it in the base, and then they'll put the resin in it. And what happens is the resin, when it gets hard, it shrinks. So you're taking all those high vibrational crystals, you're taking all those things, and then you're taking that, copper at the bottom, and you're taking these things, and they figure it out. The science behind it is actually the resin in it, when it shrinks, it puts those crystals under pressure. And when a crystal's under pressure, it gives off a electrical effect. So like a battery being plugged into a crystal, it's basically plugging the crystal into a battery naturally, where the crystals are energized, right? So it's basically, you're taking these crystals and it's like you're energizing as much as possible, and there it is. So you're taking it from the lower base and in a triangle shape, and you're taking the whole thing together, and it's going to, you know, you're taking lower vibrational frequency and the higher one. So the idea behind this is sound. And what they do is they'll take this, and a lot of people put it by 5G towers, and they'll put it by a 5G tower to dissipate the negative effects of 5G. So you might, you know, somebody will buy one and bury it near a 5G tower. Hopefully everybody's doing that. Please bury as much as you can around 5G towers. Hint, hint. So I think that's good for a lot of things. I think it does work, and it does give off what they call orgone energy. So it's a higher energetic state that's good, you know, for certain areas. I do believe that that is a good thing, you know, to have. But it's like anything. If you have it there, but you're keeping you're swearing all the time, and you're beating your kids, and you're drinking beer, and you're, you know, then if you have one of these crystals in your bedroom, it's not going to change your life, you know. So it's like you have to start inward and then, you know, work outward. But it's certainly a nice thing. It's a nice tool. I haven't gotten one of those for myself yet. I was thinking about making them once. I thought it was a neat thing, but some of them I think are doing a good job. In fact, interestingly enough, the government was outlawing them. I think I was talking to you a little bit about that before. Outlawing them in certain state. Somebody, I believe, is in Utah, was selling them, and they wanted to stop them from selling them. And they were having a successful business, and they were making like $60,000 a year selling these. And they said, no, we don't want you to sell these. And what is the, you know, why is the government getting involved with the sale of orgone crystals? Why do they care? Unless they're doing something, right? Unless they're helping people. They want people to be in a lower vibrational state, maybe. But, you know, what does it matter if somebody sells it? So that was a big controversy going on about a year ago. I'm not sure how that all shook out, but if you have the time to research it, you know, check it out. But a lot of these things are, you know, people are into these, your computers, all these things give off EMF radiation, which is a known fact, which lowers the auric field. And something like, you know, certainly certain things can help raise up your auric field, which are beneficial to you and your body. But again, if you're constantly, you know, smoking, if you're constantly smoking Camels unfiltered, and drinking, and like I said, swearing, and you know, looking at porn all the time and doing all this bad stuff, then you're probably not going to benefit by these things, you know. So these are all just like, it's like added bonus. If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, it's like +1, you know, to saving throw. But if you don't have any dice to play with, then you're in trouble. I can't hear you.
Oh my gosh, I'm just talking.
Oh, I can hear you now.
We hit EMF. Anything about the Schumann?
That's when you could just mute me if you want to talk, I guess. No.
No.
I have to go pretty soon, by the way.
Okay.
You got me for 2 hours.
Yeah.
We could do another show if you like.
Sure could.
If you liked me, if you don't like me,
You
then
say,
you don't
oh,
have
you'd be
to.
so disappointed. And I'm like, no, not No, not at all.
Right. We messaged before this for everybody listening. She said, I'm so excited we're going to talk. I said, don't worry, you'll be disappointed somehow.
Basically, I mean, I think you pretty much hit everything on these plates. Basically, they're just some extra added bonus. And
you know what? There's a lot to talk about. There's a whole science. You know, it's like asking a physicist, hey, tell me about, you know, all the things in the universe. So there's a lot. It's not just really one show. And I have talking to physicists about scientific issues, which is fun. And I could talk about these things, which is interesting too. In fact, I was teaching a CCD class, which is a Catholic school class with kids. And we got through all our textbook and all the work and everything else. And there was like some hours left to kill in the class. So I got the chalkboard and I got the chalk out. I was like, by the way, here are the chakras. So I wrote all the chakras out. I started talking about Fibonacci sequences and the flower of life and everything. And they were like, and they were sitting there like, I don't think we're supposed to be learning about this. And
what about
Catholics?
Grabovoi numbers? Grabovoi? I don't know how to say it. I've only seen it written.
To me, this doesn't take away from that. It's just adding to it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't think science is taken away from, you know, if your science is taken away from your religion, maybe you're in the wrong religion or something. Because, you know, if it doesn't make sense to you in one way, maybe it just doesn't make sense. I just say, hey, I think crystals actually have a scientific basis to work on a spiritual level, and people don't believe in spiritual levels because your pineal gland's calcified and everything else in your life, and you're not open to it, and then you're not, you know. But when you look at a chakras and you look at when you look at that, most people only have the 1 to 3rd chakra working at some basic level. They're not open to what I always talk about, is the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th, and beyond chakras. They're not open to that. So when you're at base level and third, you see most, and I'll tell you a quick thing, and I'm gonna probably peel out of here.
Yeah, peel out, yeah.
So when you watch a movie, and a lot of love story movies, you know, which a lot of women like and guys like too, but they look at a movie and the very end of the movie, the two characters fall in love and they're getting their 4th chakras in sympathetic response to each other, right? And I'm watching the end of the movie going, what about the other 3 chakras? You know, so most people only have 1 to 3 working, and they can only conceptualize the 4th chakra, the heart chakra, being in love with one other person. But what about being in love with what about the other chakras and learning how to be in love with the universe and being in love with, you know, and getting your 5th chakra and communicating? And what about the, 3rd eye? And what about the crown chakra? What about enlightenment? You know, that's not in our culture right now. That's not in a pervasive way in the media. The media only talks about up to the 4th chakra. That's where you get left on the highway and you get let out on the road and the car stops there. But if you get back in the car and you start driving, there's a whole other 3 exits to go. Most people only go up the highway up to the 3rd chakra. Their first one's all money and their survival, and they have a lot of issues. They don't do the self-work to go down that road and get all the way to the 7th chakra, to get that enlightenment chakra working. They're not working on that. So, like I said, that's why people don't have, you only vibrate with, you vibrate with what resonates with you. So when something is on a higher frequency level, like a 6th chakra, 7th chakra vibrational frequency level, if you don't have the eyes to see or the ears to hear, you're not going to understand, you're not going to conceptualize, it's not going to be important to you. Crystals aren't important to somebody if they're only at the 3rd chakra level. They don't get it. They don't believe in it. They don't want to know about it. It doesn't matter. For somebody that has these higher chakras open, they're really important and they're really cool and they're good to know about, you know? So kudos to you and your audience for being interested in it. And that just shows your spiritual progress, which is a beautiful thing to be.
I love that you said that too about only hitting the heart chakra, because that's what it is. You know, country music, rap music, most music is like, oh, I'm in love and the person hurt me, or I'm in love and I'm lonely, or I want to be with somebody. And everything is like resonating on that level of love, loneliness, love, loneliness. And it focuses a lot on lack too. A lot of music focuses on lack. So
Well, that's right. If you're looking at like gangster rap and all that, they're talking about survival. It's a base chakra, you know? And then, right? So where are we hearing? You're hearing, you know, but you're talking about music, binaural beats, sophronic frequencies. You're talking about, you know, certain, you know, Tibetan chants, Gregorian chants. Those are more appealing to our higher chakras, higher, you know, frequencies. But even within music itself, they're at 440 versus 432.
mm-hmm.
People aren't moved by certain things because they don't have that ability. They don't have the eyes to see at that level. They're only into that. You know, if you have a guy who's only into gangster rap and he's into gang, you know, you can't, you know, there's a funny meme about SpongeBob SquarePants on the way to work. And they show him in a car and he's listening to gangster rap about killing people. And he pulls up to the Krabby Patty, you know, to go to work. It's like, yeah, that's what you're listening to, but you're going in to do that, you know. But you know, so anybody can make them feel, you can make yourself feel, you know, negative really easily. It takes a little more work to make yourself feel positive and make you to get up to that higher chakra level, to get into that, you know, higher you know, aspect. And I speak about higher and lower, but it's just they're basically vibrational frequencies of thinking.
And then being positive too, because if I listen to some music, it makes me want to speed. Some music it make you want to punch somebody, and then other music, like I have to say it, Mary J. Blige music makes me depressed. So I don't like listening to a lot of music. I really don't. Well, I'm looking forward to it because well, we're going to talk again when it's New Year, New Men, because you're a counselor. But tell people how to find you and, you know, about your channels. And then we'll
sure.
up.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, I just ended up last night, I deleted my Instagram account, which I felt bad about because I make original memes. I had 4,000 memes and a lot of them go viral. I might still be able to do it on my laptop, but they just changed the settings. So Instagram, when you go on it, you automatically are complying with their new privacy law settings. So what they are allowed to do is look at all they could basically look through your camera anytime they want. They could video record you without your knowledge. They could take the microphone, listen at any time. This isn't a joke. And they could look at where you are. They would turn it on. Let's say if you're outside your house and you go into a certain area, they can see if you're wearing a mask or not. And then they are allowed to report you to the government. So yeah, look that up for yourself. It's within the new privacy settings that they could do all this. So I deleted my Instagram. I mean, I could use it on a computer and have the computer turned off all the time if I want to do it, but they are allowed to get access to your contacts, and they're able to look at the contacts that you have and actually read the websites you're going to and look at your GPS and always find out where you are. So it's literally you're giving them everything when you're on Instagram. So I deleted that, but you could find me on Facebook. You could Google me. I have a website called Victor Hamsa, HMSA, victor.com. And I have a website called The Spiritual Scientist. And I do distance healing, spiritual mentoring. I'm offering crystals for sale. If you're looking for a crystal, a certain one, let me know. And if you're interested in getting a meditation certificate, getting certified, I do offer that. And I do, when it's nicer out, we're going to be doing some retreats. And yeah, that'd be cool. I have a lot of people who are interested in doing that. And I've taught in ashrams and groups, different spiritual workshops. And I do a lot of what I do for free. So, I try to do everything I can for free, as much as possible, and get a lot of information out there for people. But, and I post a lot of crystals on my website. Most of them are under $10. I'm not trying to, a lot, I could have, if you're interested in a certain one, I have, little ones to, big ones to all different, all different sizes all over the place. Like
don't start. I love crystals, man.
Yeah, if you want to,
you don't really know much about them, but you just want to have them because you're like, oh my God, this one is so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
It's nice. So I'll go in the warehouse and from my friend, I'll go through and I'll pick, like, he'll have 10,000 pieces and I'll pick out 5, you know what I mean? Like, and then I pick them out and put them out and people like, oh my God, like they flip out when they see it. And I know it's good, when you, like, I have some really neat stuff. Like here's a crystal ball and it's like, it's smoky quartz, it's quartz, and it's amethyst, all 3 combined. And you could literally see where they're combined. You see that? It's really neat. And it's like very unusual to have amethyst, quartz, and smoky quartz. You could see all 3 of them together in one. It's so cool.
Talk about it. We can negotiate later. Like, can I get
That's what happens. You go, it's hard for me to sell certain pieces. I'll go out and buy them. I'm like, I can't sell this one too. You just get stuck with it.
I really wanted to be adopted because your mom, your wife is a geologist. You guys seem like you guys have so much fun. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll adopt you. You just have to cook and clean. You could come on board. It's no problem.
Hey.
Do some dishes. Are you good at laundry?
I hate dishes.
How about laundry? You like doing laundry?
Well, that was Victor and how you reach Victor. On the 1st of the month, I'm so excited because we're going to have some fun. We're going to do the Wiz listening party. We're not going to do the whole movie, but we're going to do the music of the Wiz and just go through the soundtrack because there's so many lessons in it. And me and the ladies, we're going to get dressed, bring our cocktails and listen to the music, but then talk about the lessons that are involved inside this music. There's a lot of positivity and it sheds a lot. I know everybody's always talking about the flying monkeys. That's a big part of it. The narcissist and the flying monkey. The Wiz, looking outside yourself when you need to look inside yourself to help yourself and create your own answers, And, even that last song where Dorothy says, at home, she can go home and feel, basically you're at home wherever you are. It just is, everything is inside of you, everything you need. So that's going to be so much fun. January 1st at 7 p.m. And then Victor will be back with Mr. Bowtie, Warren Feaster, Mr. Bowtie, and Shalom I Am Light, talking about New Year, New Man. We'll talk about women too, but we're going to go through some memes that talk about relationship advice for women. All right, that's gonna be fun. We can talk a little trash. Everybody won't agree. It's gonna be some differences, but it's gonna be some excitement. But Mr. Bowtie has been a counselor since he was 14 years old, and we just talked to him the other day with his book "Marriage is Work." So I'm really looking forward to that. And then my lovely friend, I call her Lady Victoria Wood Kunyinga. She makes potions with flowers to help you control your mood, to lift you out of depression, to actually help heal you. So we're going to do the Flowers Speak on the 14th on a Thursday at 7 p.m. So I'm looking forward to all of this. We're going to have lots of fun. I'm just looking forward to taking things to a whole nother level, having fun and learning how to live the best life we can, and taking, just getting the most out of life. Like they say, YOLO, living out loud, all of that. So thank you, Victor, for hanging out with me, my friend. I think we only knew each other maybe a month. So, but I just admire what you do. I'm looking forward to snatching some of them crystals out your house and checking out some.
We're gonna get you one.
Yeah, we got to do that. So
we got to get you one. All right.
We do. Have a great night, and thank you for people that joined. And when I put this up on not Facebook, but YouTube, I'm sure we're going to break it up into segments, because this was like 2 full hours, but a lot of information. But like and subscribe, and share, most of all. And check out Victor's channel. Like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.